The Great Hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with worried voices. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in their floating chairs, speaking in hushed tones about the crisis that had brought them together. The massive chamber, built to inspire peace and unity, felt heavy with fear today. Ambassador Theron of the Villani Federation stood at the center of the hall. His crystalline body caught the light from above, creating rainbow patterns on the walls. But there was no beauty in his appearance today. Cracks ran through his crystal skin, and his normally bright inner light flickered weakly. He looked like a being on the edge of breaking. "Honored council members," Theron began, his voice carrying the musical tone that all Villani possessed. "I come before you not as a diplomat, but as a survivor. My people are dying." The hall fell silent. Even the most hardened warriors among the council felt the pain in Theron's words. The Villani were known throughout the galaxy as peaceful traders and artists. They had never fought a war. They didn't even have a military. "The Krex Empire has invaded our home systems," Theron continued. "They came without warning, without demands, without mercy. They destroy our cities and consume our people. We have tried to negotiate, but they do not listen. They only hunger." A holographic display appeared above Theron, showing images from the Villani worlds. The council members watched in horror as massive insect-like creatures tore through crystal. Cities. Krex warriors, each standing 3 meters tall, with armor-plated shells and razor-sharp claws, hunted down fleeing Villani civilians. The images showed burning spaceports, shattered domes, refugees streaming through the void in whatever ships they could find. "Counselor, how many worlds have fallen?" "7 of our 12 core systems," Theron replied. "The Krex move like a plague. They take everything and leave nothing but empty shells behind." General Vex of the Kornon Military Alliance spoke next. His voice was gruff like grinding stone. "The Krex have always been aggressive, but this is different. They're not just raiding. They're trying to wipe out your entire species." Theron nodded slowly. "We have evacuated as many civilians as possible, but millions remain trapped. They cannot escape on their own." The council erupted into discussion. Representatives called out suggestions and offers of aid. The Tellurians could spare a defense fleet of 30 ships. The Corvani offered medical supplies and refugee transport. The Zentari promised financial support for reconstruction efforts. But as each offer was made, the military advisors ran calculations on their data tablets. Their faces grew grimmer with each passing minute. Finally, Fleet Admiral Holt of the Sector Defense Force stood to address the council. "With respect to all offers made," Admiral Holt said, his scarred face serious, "the Krex have committed over 2,000 heavy warships to this campaign. They have turned this into a war of extinction." He activated his own display, showing battle projections and force comparisons. "Even if we could gather every available ship from willing council members, we would need at least 3 months to properly coordinate the fleet. The Villani don't have 3 months. They may not have 3 weeks." The hall fell into shocked silence. Many representatives stared at their hands or at the floor. The most powerful military alliance in the galaxy was admitting defeat before the battle had even begun. That's when Admiral Kane stood up. Kane represented Earth, one of the newest members of the Galactic Council. He was a tall, lean human with gray hair and quiet eyes. Most council members barely knew him. Humans had only joined the galactic community 15 years ago, and they kept to themselves. Their homeworld was classified as a Deathworld, but nobody really understood what that meant. "The Earth's Federation can provide immediate assistance," Kane said simply. Counselor Bren turned to stare at him. "Admiral Kane, with all respect to your people, Earth has only been spacefaring for a few decades. The Krex Empire has conquered worlds for centuries." Kane's expression didn't change. "I understand your concern, Counselor. Yeah. But Earth can have a response fleet at the Villani border within 72 hours. General Vex laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Admiral, the Krex fleet numbers in the thousands. How many ships can Earth possibly send?" "Enough," Kane replied. Admiral Holt frowned. "Admiral Kane, our intelligence reports show that Earth's total fleet consists of perhaps 100 vessels. While we appreciate the gesture, This situation requires massive firepower and extensive coordination. Kane looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of representatives who had dismissed his offer. Members of the council, I need to explain something about human military doctrine. We approach warfare differently than other species in this chamber. He paused, choosing his words carefully. When humans decide to fight a war, we don't send token forces or limited engagements. We commit everything. Our entire military philosophy is built around the concept of total victory through overwhelming force. Theron stepped forward, his crystal body trembling with hope and desperation. Admiral Kane, my people will accept any help you can provide. We have no other options. Kane nodded to the Vellani ambassador. Then you have Earth's full commitment. But I must warn the Council that human military operations may seem extreme compared to standard galactic practices. We don't follow the same rules of engagement. Counselor Bren looked confused. What do you mean by different rules? Human warfare evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill us, Kane explained. We learned that half measures in combat only lead to defeat and death. When we fight to win completely. Admiral Holt activated his data tablet and pulled up Earth's military records. According to our files, Earth had several major conflicts in recent centuries. But those were planetary wars against other humans. Space combat requires different strategies and technologies. Kane's mouth formed what might have been a smile, but his eyes remained cold. Admiral, those planetary conflicts taught us principles that apply to any battlefield. We're not alone in the universe. The council chamber filled with murmurs of discussion. Many representatives seemed uncertain about this offer from the newcomers, but Theron looked at Kane with desperate gratitude. The Galactic Council votes on emergency military intervention, announced the speaker. All in favor of authorizing Earth's Federation forces to engage the Krex Empire in defense of Vellani territory. The vote was unanimous. Every representative raised their hand. Even those who seemed doubtful about Earth's capabilities, Kane bowed formally to the council. Thank you for your trust, Admiral Theron. We will not let your people fall to the Krex. As the session ended and representatives began filing out of the chamber, none of them truly understood what they had just authorized. They had asked a Deathworld, species for military aid, and now they would learn exactly what that meant. News of the Galactic Council's decision spread across the galaxy within hours. On trading stations and military outposts, alien species gathered around communication screens to discuss the development. Most reactions were the same: confusion and doubt. In the Tellurian capital city of New Haven, citizens watched the news broadcasts with mixed feelings. Captain Nez, a veteran of 3 border conflicts, shook his head as he sat in a crowded cafe. Humans, he said to his companion. Council is sending humans to fight the Krex Empire? His friend, a civilian engineer named Port, pulled up information on his datapad. Says here that Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world. I've never heard of a rating that high. Captain Nez frowned. What does that even mean? I thought. Death worlds were just planets with harsh weather or dangerous animals. Apparently not, Port replied, reading from his screen. Earth has active tectonic plates, extreme weather systems, predatory megafauna, deadly microorganisms, and atmospheric electrical storms. The evaluation report says that most galactic species would die within hours of landing there. And humans evolved there? Captain Nez asked in disbelief. Meanwhile, in the heart of Krex space, Emperor Vorth received his own intelligence briefing about Earth's intervention. The massive insectoid ruler sat on his throne of polished bone, his forearms clicking with amusement as his advisors presented their findings. General Kex, his primary military commander, activated a holographic display showing human anatomy. My Emperor, these creatures are remarkably weak. No natural armor, no claws, no venom glands. Their skin is soft and easily damaged. The hologram rotated, showing a human figure from all angles. Other Krex officers laughed at what they saw. Compared to their own 3-meter frames and chitinous armor plating, humans looked fragile and small. Their weapons are primitive projectile systems, continued General Kex. Chemical explosives and metal projectiles.
Oh,
Our armor can deflect such attacks easily. Emperor Vorth's mandibles clicked together in what passed for laughter among his species. These mammals think they can challenge the Krex Empire? How many ships can they possibly field? Intelligence estimates no more than 100 vessels. My Emperor replied, Commander Hex, the fleet tactical officer. Their entire species has been spacefaring for less than 50 standard years. They have no experience in true warfare. 100 ships, Emperor Vorth mused. I have assigned 2,000 vessels to the Villani campaign. These humans will be consumed like all the others. But on Earth, surrounded by screens showing military installations across human space, the room hummed with activity as officers coordinated. The largest mobilization in human history. Status report, Kane ordered. General Brooks, head of fleet operations, stepped forward with a data tablet. All defense fleets have been recalled to staging areas. Luna shipyards are operating at maximum capacity. We've activated every reserve unit and recalled all retired personnel. What about the outer colonies? Kane asked. Mars Defense Force is moving to Sol System. The asteroid mining fleets have been converted to support vessels. Even the research stations are contributing whatever ships they have. Kane nodded as he watched the displays. Ships were converging on Earth from dozens of systems. These weren't just military vessels. Human civilian ships were being rapidly converted for war. Cargo haulers became troop transports. Mining ships became mobile weapons platforms. Research vessels became electronic warfare units. Admiral, said Colonel Park, the intelligence officer, we're receiving confused communications from other Council species. They're asking why we're mobilizing so many civilian vessels. Kane looked at the tactical display showing the growing fleet around Earth. They don't understand our doctrine, Colonel. They think of war as something conducted by professional soldiers with specialized equipment, and we think of war as something that involves entire civilizations, added General Brooks. Dr. Wells, the senior military analyst, approached with her own report. Admiral, I've been reviewing Galactic Council military records. Their concept of warfare is very different from ours. They have rules about civilian targets, proportional response, and limited engagement. What kind of rules? Kane asked. They don't attack industrial centers unless they're directly military related. They avoid populated areas. They give advance warning before major operations. They even allow enemy forces to retreat and regroup. The room fell silent as the humans processed this information. Finally, General Brooks spoke. They fight wars. Like they're playing games. Games with rules, Kane agreed. But the Krex don't seem to follow those rules when they're exterminating the Villani. No, Dr. Wells confirmed. Krex tactics involve total destruction of enemy populations and resources, but even they appear to have limitations. They don't pursue retreating forces aggressively, and they focus on territory control rather than enemy destruction. Kane walked to the main display, which showed the estimated Krex fleet positions. Show me their recent battle patterns. The screen changed to display several recent Krex campaigns. Dr. Wells pointed to various tactical movements. They rely on overwhelming numerical superiority and direct assault. They expect enemies to either surrender quickly or fight conventional defensive battles. They've never fought someone who doesn't follow galactic military conventions, observed Colonel Park. Exactly, Kane replied. They're expecting us to behave like every other Council species. Announce our intentions, limit our targets, fight fair battles in open space. General Brooks smiled grimly. They have no idea what human warfare actually looks like. Outside the war room, human space was transforming. On Luna, the great shipyards that normally produce civilian vessels were retooling for war production. The asteroid belt mining operations redirected their industrial capacity to create weapons and ammunition. Even the agricultural colonies were contributing. Instructors pulled up historical files from Earth's past conflicts. Young officers studied the tactics used in the great wars of the 20th and 21st centuries. They learned about combined arms operations, strategic bombing, naval blockades, and economic warfare. The key to understanding human military doctrine, explained Professor Rice to a class of naval officers, is that we don't just fight enemy armies. We fight enemy nations. We target their ability to make war, not just their current military forces. The students took careful notes as Professor Rice continued. When humans go to war, we aim for unconditional surrender through total victory. We learned long ago that leaving an enemy partially defeated only means fighting them again later. As the human fleet continued to grow, alien observers became increasingly confused. Intelligence reports reached the Galactic Council, describing the massive mobilization around Earth. Some species began to worry that they had made a mistake. Counselor Bryn contacted Admiral Kane directly. "Admiral, our scouts report that you're mobilizing thousands of vessels." The authorization was for a rescue mission, not a full-scale invasion. Kane's response was calm but firm. "Counselor, when humans commit to military action, we commit completely. Half measures lead to failure and unnecessary casualties. But surely a few hundred ships would be sufficient for a defensive operation." "Counselor," Kane replied, "humans don't fight defensive operations." As the communication ended, Kane returned his attention to the fleet status reports. In just 48 hours, humanity had assembled the largest military force in its history. But more importantly, they had activated a war machine that the galaxy had never seen before. Emperor Vorth and his Krex commanders continued their assault on Villani worlds, confident that the approaching human force would be easily destroyed. They had no concept of what was coming toward them through hyperspace. The galaxy was about to learn. What happened when you asked a species of apex predators for help? The Villani system of Krista Prime hung in space like a dying jewel. Once home to 15 billion crystalline beings, the planet now showed massive scars from orbital bombardment. Grex warships moved in lazy patterns around the world, their commanders. Confident that the remaining resistance would collapse within days, Admiral Zar commanded the Krex Second Fleet from his flagship, the massive dreadnought Death's Hunger. The ship was 3 kilometers long and bristled with weapons designed to crack planetary surfaces. Like all Krex vessels, it was built for intimidation as much as destruction. Report Zar clicked to his tactical officer. "The human fleet has arrived at the system edge," Officer Tech replied, his claws dancing across his control station. 200 vessels detected so far." Admiral Zar's mandibles clicked with amusement. 200. The mammals brought even fewer ships than our intelligence predicted. "Signal the fleet to form battle formation. We will crush them quickly and return to bombarding the planet." The Krex fleet began moving into their traditional attack formation. 800 heavy warships arranged themselves in a massive wall, with smaller vessels forming supporting lines behind them. It was an impressive sight that had terrified dozens of species across the centuries. But as the Krex ships moved into position, something unexpected happened. The human fleet did not respond in kind. On the bridge of the human dreadnought Retribution, Captain Ross watched the alien formation with professional interest. His ship was smaller than the Krex flagship, but it moved with a grace that the insectoid VESSELs lacked tactical assessment, Ross ordered. Lieutenant Taylor, his weapons officer, studied her displays. "The Krex are forming a standard wall formation. They're expecting us to do the same and meet them head-on." "Enemy numbers?" Ross asked. 800 capital ships, approximately 1,500 support vessels. They outnumber us 4-1, Captain. Ross smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "They're thinking in 2 dimensions. Commander Willis, signal the fleet. Execute Battle Plan Omega." The human response was unlike anything the Krex had ever encountered. Instead of forming a battle line, the human ships scattered in all directions. Some dove below the plane of battle, others climbed high above it. Fighter squadrons launched from the larger vessels and spread out in complex patterns. Admiral watched in confusion as the human formation dissolved into apparent chaos. "What are they doing? Have they lost formation discipline already?" "Unknown," Admiral replied Officer Tech. "Their movement pattern makes no tactical sense. They are exposing themselves to concentrated fire, and we will give them concentrated fire," Zar decided. "All ships, target the largest human vessels. Fire at will." The Krex fleet opened fire with devastating force. Particle beams and plasma cannons sent destructive energy across space toward the human ships. But the humans were no longer where the Krex expected them to be. Captain Ross felt the retribution shudder as enemy fire passed close by. But his ship was already moving to its next position, part of a carefully planned dance of destruction. "Enemy firing pattern analysis complete," reported Lieutenant Taylor. "They're targeting where we were, not where we're going." "Classic mistake," Ross noted. "They fight like they're commanding stationary fortresses. Begin the real attack." What happened next shattered every assumption the Krex held about space warfare. The human fleet struck from 6 different directions at once. Ships that had seemed to scatter randomly were actually positioning themselves for coordinated strikes against weak points in the Krex formation. The dreadnought Retribution led a spearhead attack directly through the center of the Krex line. But instead of engaging in a slugging match with the heavier enemy ships, it fired precise volleys at command and control systems before racing past to strike targets behind the main formation. Above and below, human heavy cruisers hammered the Krex flanks with weapons that seemed impossibly powerful for their size. The aliens discovered that human ships sacrificed armor and size for speed and firepower. Where Krex vessels were built like mobile fortresses, human ships were built like guided missiles. Admiral Czar watched in growing alarm as his formation began to collapse. How are they moving so fast? Their ships should not be able to maneuver like that. Admiral Officer Tech replied, his voice tight with fear. "Human ships appear to be built differently than ours. They have much higher thrust-to-weight ratios." The truth was even more disturbing. Human ships were designed by a species that had learned warfare and 3-dimensional aerial combat. Every human pilot understood concepts that most galactic species had never developed. They fought in all dimensions simultaneously, using gravity wells and orbital mechanics as weapons. Commander Davis, leading a squadron of human destroyers, demonstrated this as she used a moon's gravity to slingshot her ships around behind the Krex reserve fleet. Her vessels emerged from the moon's shadow at tremendous speed, their weapons already firing. "Target their engine sections," Davis ordered. "Dead ships can't run away to fight us again later." The destroyer squadron tore through the Krex rear guard like sharks through a school of fish. Each human ship targeted critical systems with surgical precision. They didn't try to destroy enemy vessels completely. They disabled them, leaving them helpless in space. This was human warfare doctrine in action. Destroy the enemy's ability to fight, then deal with survivors at leisure. Admiral Czar realized that his fleet was not just losing the battle, it was being systematically dismantled. Signal retreat. All ships withdraw to jump coordinates. But the humans had anticipated this. As Krex ships tried to disengage and retreat, they found human vessels already positioned along their escape routes. The mammals had studied Krex tactical manuals and knew exactly where the aliens would try to go. Captain Ross coordinated the pursuit with calm efficiency. "All units, this is Retribution. The enemy is attempting to withdraw. Execute pursuit protocols. No enemy vessel is to escape this system." The Krex fleet found themselves trapped in a 3-dimensional maze of human ships. Every time they tried to group together for a coordinated retreat, human fighters would dart in to attack their formation. When they tried to scatter and run individually, human heavy ships would intercept them. Admiral Czar's flagship took direct hits from 3 different human vessels. His bridge filled with smoke as control systems overloaded. This is impossible. How can such small ships carry such powerful weapons? The answer was that human ships were built by a species that understood the difference between surviving a battle and winning a war. While other galactic races built ships to last through multiple engagements, humans built ships to ensure that multiple engagements would never be necessary. As the battle continued, observers throughout the galaxy watched. In shock, the mighty Krex Second Fleet, which had conquered dozens of worlds, was being destroyed by a human force less than half its size. On the bridge of the Retribution, Captain Ross received damage reports from across the human fleet. "Casualties?" he asked. 17 ships damaged, 3 destroyed, reported his communications officer. Total crew losses, 437. Ross nodded grimly. Each human life lost was a tragedy, but the numbers were far better than anyone had expected. The Krex had lost over 400 ships in the same time period. Signal Admiral Kane, Ross ordered. First engagement complete. Krex Second Fleet. Eliminated. Proceeding to secure a system and begin Phase 2 operations. The surviving Krex ships finally managed to jump away from the battle, but they carried with them news that would shake the entire Empire. The humans did not fight like any species the galaxy had ever seen. They fought like the apex predators. They had evolved to be, in the depths of space. The human fleet regrouped and began the next phase of their operation. Oh, this had only been the beginning. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened just 18 hours after the Battle of Krista Prime. Representatives from across the galaxy had demanded immediate answers about what they had witnessed through long-range sensors and fleeing Krex survivors. Counselor Bren stood at the center of the chamber, his blue skin pale with shock. In front of him, holographic displays showed the aftermath of the human victory. Where the mighty Krex Second Fleet had once patrolled, only debris fields and disabled ships remained. The reports cannot be accurate, declared General Vex of the Cornan Military Alliance. His stone-like features showed disbelief. No force that small could destroy an entire Krex battle fleet. Dr. Plex, the galaxy's leading military analyst, activated her presentation system. The elderly scholar's tentacles trembled as she manipulated the controls. I have analyzed all available sensor data from the engagement. Reports are not only accurate, they may actually understate human effectiveness. The chamber fell silent. As Dr. Plex began her briefing, the Krex Second Fleet consisted of 800 capital ships and 1,500 support vessels. Total crew, approximately 4 million Krex warriors. Human forces numbered 200 ships with estimated crew of 50,000. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The numbers seemed impossible. The battle lasted exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes. Dr. Plex continued. Human casualties, 437. Krex casualties, 3.8 million. Krex. Ships destroyed or disabled, 2,100. Counselor Lex of the Meridian Trade Union stood up shakily. Dr. Plex, those numbers suggest that humans are somehow supernatural warriors. That cannot be correct. Dr. Plex's display changed to show tactical analysis of the battle. The humans employed warfare techniques that we have no records of in galactic military history. They attacked from multiple vectors simultaneously while maintaining perfect coordination. Their ships moved in patterns that suggest three-dimensional tactical thinking far beyond our current understanding. Admiral Holt of the Sector Defense Force studied the tactical displays with growing alarm. Dr. Plex, our military computers cannot even model some of these maneuvers. How did human pilots execute them? That brings us to the most disturbing aspect of this analysis, Dr. Plex replied. Human combat effectiveness appears to be the result of evolutionary adaptation to extreme survival conditions. They come from what we now understand is not just a death world, but perhaps the most dangerous planet any known species has ever evolved on. The display changed again, showing Earth from orbit. To most galactic species, it looked like a beautiful blue and green world, but Dr. Plex's analysis revealed the truth beneath that beauty. Earth experiences regular catastrophic events that would extinguish most galactic civilizations. Massive storms, seismic activity, volcanic eruptions, ice ages, and asteroid impacts. But humans did not just survive these events. They thrived because of them. Senator Cole of the Aquatic Leagues raised a fin-like appendage. Dr. Plex, how does surviving natural disasters translate to space combat superiority? Because humans evolved as persistence hunters and pack predators, Dr. Plex explained. They developed the ability to coordinate complex group attacks while pursuing prey across vast distances. They learned to think strategically about resource denial and territory control. Most critically, they learned that the only safe victory is total victory. The chamber buzzed with worried conversations. Representatives were beginning to understand that they had badly miscalculated humanity's nature. Dr. Plex continued her presentation. Analysis of human historical records reveals consistent patterns of warfare unlike anything in galactic history. When humans fight, they target not just enemy military forces, but the entire infrastructure that supports those forces. They practice what they call total war. What does that mean? Asked Counselor Bren. It means they wage war against entire civilizations, not just armies. They attack supply lines, industrial centers, communication networks, and civilian infrastructure. That supports military operations. They continue fighting until their enemies are completely incapable of resistance. The implications of this revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. Galactic warfare had evolved into a relatively civilized affair over millennia. Wars were fought between professional military forces with established rules and limited objectives. The idea of targeting civilian infrastructure was considered barbaric. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, news of the human victory was spreading through communication networks. On dozens of worlds, military leaders gathered to analyze the battle recordings and try to understand what they had witnessed in the Tellurian capital. Our computers have run the simulation 50 times, he told his officers. In every projection, the Krex should have won decisively. Commander Price, his intelligence chief, shook her head in amazement. Admiral, I think our computers are using the wrong assumptions. They're calculating based on how we would fight such a battle. And how would humans fight differently? They don't seem to consider any targets off limits, Price replied. Look at this segment where they target Krex Command. Ships specifically. They're not just trying to win the battle. They're trying to destroy the enemy's ability to coordinate future battles. Admiral Fenn studied the tactical display. They're thinking several steps ahead. Every move is designed to create long-term strategic advantage, not just immediate tactical gain. Similar conversations were taking place on military bases across known space. Professional soldiers were realizing that human warfare operated on principles that most galactic species had never considered. But the most dramatic reactions were occurring within the Krex Empire itself. Emperor Vorth had retreated to his private chambers after receiving reports of the disaster at Christa Prime for the first time in his reign. The mighty Krex ruler felt something his species rarely experienced: fear. General Kex entered the chamber cautiously. My Emperor, we have received additional intelligence about human capabilities. Speak forth, commanded, his voice barely above a whisper. The humans have not stopped their advance after defeating our second fleet. They are systematically hunting down every Krex vessel in Volani space. More disturbing, they are attacking our supply bases and refueling stations throughout the sector. Emperor Vorth's forearms clicked nervously. They are pursuing military targets. That is to be expected. No, my Emperor. They are targeting civilian shipping, industrial centers, and even agricultural stations. They appear to be trying to destroy our ability to maintain military operations in the region. The Emperor stood and walked to his viewing window, which showed the lights of the Krex capital city. How many survivors from the Second Fleet? Fewer than 100 ships escaped to hyperspace. Most of those are damaged and barely operational. Emperor Vorth realized that he was facing something unprecedented in Krex history. An enemy that fought not just to win battles, but to destroy their opponents completely. General Kex sent messages to all fleet commanders. Human forces are not to be engaged in direct combat. All ships are to withdraw from Volani territory. Immediately. My Emperor, that would mean abandoning our entire campaign. Better to abandon a campaign than lose the entire empire. Dr. Plex was concluding her briefing with the most disturbing revelation of all. Based on analysis of human military deployment patterns, what we witnessed at Christa Prime was not their full capability. Intelligence suggests they have mobilized over 10 times the force they used in this engagement. Counselor Bren struggled to maintain order. Dr. Plex, he called out over the noise, are you suggesting that humans could defeat any military force in the galaxy? Counselor, Dr. Plex replied solemnly, I am suggesting that humans may be capable of defeating all military forces in the galaxy simultaneously. The galaxy was beginning to understand that asking for humanity's help had unleashed something far more powerful and dangerous than anyone had imagined. 6 months after the Battle of Krista Prime, the Krex Empire had ceased to exist. Admiral Kane stood on the observation deck of his flagship, watching the final human ships depart from what had once been the Krex home system. Behind them, they left a sector of space that would never again threaten galactic peace. The Krex worlds were now under Galactic Council administration. Their former inhabitants scattered across refugee camps on distant planets. The war had not ended with surrender or negotiation. It had ended with the complete dismantling of an entire interstellar empire. Captain Ross joined Admiral Kane at the viewing window. Final casualty reports, sir. Total human losses, 2,412 personnel across all operations. Kane nodded silently. Each loss weighed heavily on him, but the numbers told a story that even he found difficult to believe. In 6 months of continuous warfare, humanity had destroyed an empire that had existed for over 800 years, and done it with fewer casualties than most galactic species lost in a single major battle. Krex casualties? Kane asked, though. He already knew the answer would be disturbing. Military casualties, approximately 12 million. Civilian displacement, 800 million. Industrial capacity, 97% destroyed. Naval capability, completely eliminated. Kane looked out at the empty space where the Krex capital world orbited its star. The planet itself was intact, but its massive orbital shipyards and military installations had been systematically dismantled. Nothing remained that could support a war machine. Any word from the Galactic Council? Kane asked. They're requesting immediate withdrawal of all human forces from former Krex territory, Ross replied. Counselor Bren sent a personal message, asking for a meeting to discuss future protocols for military intervention. Kane almost smiled at that. The galaxy was finally beginning to understand what they had unleashed when they asked Earth for help. On the Villani homeworld of Krista Prime, Ambassador Theron walked through the rebuilt sections of his capital city. The crystal spires gleamed. In the sunlight, restored to their former beauty by human engineering teams. His people were safe, their civilization preserved, their children able to grow up without fear of Krex invasion. But Theron felt a deep unease that had nothing to do with gratitude. He paused at a memorial plaza where the names of human casualties were etched in crystal. 437 names from the first battle alone. Each name represented a being who had died to protect people they had never met. From a species they barely knew, Dr. Vent, his chief advisor, approached. With a troubled expression, Ambassador, we have received the final reports on human military operations throughout former Krex space. Theron's crystalline features reflected his inner conflict. How comprehensive were they? Total Ambassador. The humans did not merely defeat the Krex military. They systematically destroyed every installation, facility, and resource that could support future military operations. Shipyards, weapons factories, training centers, research facilities, supply depots, communication networks, even civilian infrastructure that could be converted to military use. Theron absorbed this information slowly, and the Krex population scattered across 47 different worlds as refugees. Their government structure has been completely dismantled. Their military traditions have been ... terminated. Intelligence estimates suggest it would take them several centuries to rebuild even basic space travel capability. The Villani ambassador looked up at the crystal memorial. Dr. Vent, when we asked for help, we expected military assistance. We did not expect the complete extinction of our enemies as a functioning civilization. The humans were very clear about their methods, Ambassador. Admiral Kane warned the Council that human warfare differs from galactic norms. Yes, but none of us understood what that actually meant. Dr. Vent activated a small holographic display showing the current map of galactic space, where Krex territory had once existed. There was now a vast region marked as under Council administration. It would take decades to resettle and stabilize. Ambassador, Dr. Vent said quietly, there are reports that several other aggressive species have completely abandoned their expansion plans after witnessing human capabilities. The Helix Consortium has withdrawn from 3 border disputes. The savage clans have ceased raiding operations entirely. Theron realized that humanity's intervention had achieved something no galactic military force had ever managed. They had actually created lasting peace through the demonstration of overwhelming power, but the cost of that peace was troubling. 2 species that had evolved beyond such brutal effectiveness? In the Galactic Council chambers, an emergency session was addressing the long-term implications of humanity's military intervention. The debate had been ongoing for weeks. No clear consensus had emerged. Councillor Bryn stood before a display showing human military deployment patterns. We must establish new protocols for requesting military assistance from Deathworld species. The current situation cannot be allowed to repeat. Dr. Plex, now serving as the Council's chief military advisor, had spent months analyzing human warfare methods. Honorable Councillors, I have completed my comprehensive study of human military doctrine. The findings are unsettling. The chamber fell silent as Dr. Plex activated her presentation. Humans practice what they call preventive warfare. When they identify a threat, they do not merely neutralize that threat. They eliminate the possibility that the threat could ever emerge again. This is fundamentally different from how other galactic species approach conflict resolution. Senator Cole raised a fin. Dr. Plex, are you saying that humans cannot fight limited wars? I am saying that humans do not believe in limited wars, Senator. Their entire military philosophy is based on the principle that incomplete victory leads to future conflicts. They prefer to fight one devastating war rather than a series of smaller ones. General Vex leaned forward in his chair. Surely they understand the concept of proportional response. Dr. Plex's tentacles moved in what her species considered a gesture of deep concern. General, to humans, proportional response means using exactly the amount of force necessary to ensure permanent victory. They calculate proportionality very differently than we do. The implications of this revelation settled over the Council like a dark cloud. They had invited humanity into galactic affairs, but humanity operated by rules that most civilized species had abandoned long ago. What do we do now? Asked Councillor Lex. We cannot uninvite Earth from the galactic community. Nor would we want to, added Ambassador Theron, who had been granted speaking privileges for this session. Humanity saved my people from extinction, but I believe the galaxy needs to understand that asking for human military aid is not like requesting help from other Council species. Admiral Holt, who had been silent throughout the debate, finally spoke. Perhaps that is not entirely negative. The galaxy has been relatively peaceful for centuries because most species understand the costs of warfare. Now we have a species that actually makes those costs visible. Dr. Plex nodded slowly. Admiral Holt raises an important point. Since human intervention began, aggressive actions by expansionist species have declined by 74%. Fear of human retaliation has become a significant factor in diplomatic calculations. Councillor Bren looked around the chamber at his fellow representatives. So we have achieved peace through intimidation rather than diplomacy. Sometimes, said a new voice. Intimidation is the only diplomacy that aggressive species understand.
Oh.
Heads turned as Admiral Kane entered the chamber. He had been summoned to answer questions about human military operations, but his presence still made many representatives uncomfortable. Admiral Kane, Councillor Bren said formally, the Council appreciates your attendance. We have been discussing protocols for future military interventions. Kane took his position at the speaker's podium. Councillor Humanity did exactly what we said we would do. We provided military assistance to protect the Villani from extinction. But you destroyed an entire empire, Councillor Lex protested. Eliminated a threat, Kane corrected. The Krex Empire practiced genocide as state policy. Leaving them partially defeated would have only ensured that they would rebuild and try again in the future. Could you not have simply defended Villani territory without pursuing offensive operations? Asked General Vex. Kane's expression was patient but firm. General, humanity learned long ago that purely defensive strategies lead to prolonged conflicts and higher casualties. We end wars by making it impossible for our enemies to continue fighting. The chamber was quiet as representatives processed this explanation. Finally, Ambassador Theron spoke. Admiral Kane, my people are grateful for our survival, but we are also troubled by the thoroughness of your methods. Kane nodded respectfully to the Villani ambassador. Ambassador, I understand your concerns, but I would ask you to consider this. Your children will grow up in a galaxy where the Krex threat no longer exists. That is worth something. As the session concluded, the galaxy had reached an uncomfortable understanding. Humanity was now part of the galactic community, but they were not like other species. They were the predators that other civilizations called upon when diplomacy failed and survival was at stake. The price of that protection was the knowledge that humanity's idea of help involved the complete elimination of threats rather than their management. The galaxy was safer, but it would never again make the mistake of casually requesting aid from a species of Deathworld apex predators.
The alarm bells rang through Station Alpha 9 like angry metal birds. Commander Vell's forearms moved quickly across the control panels, his insect-like eyes scanning the data that flowed across dozens of screens. Something was coming toward their space, and it was big. What do we have? Vell asked, his voice clicking through the universal translator. Crix, the crystal being at the sensor station, made a sound like breaking glass. Unknown vessel, Commander. It appeared on our scanners 20 minutes ago. The energy readings are strange. Nala, the blue-skinned amphibian researcher, swam closer in her water-filled mobility suit. How strange? She asked, her gills fluttering. With worry, Vell looked at the main screen where a rough shape appeared. The ship looked old and ugly compared to their sleek vessels. It had thick metal plates bolted together, with what looked like ancient fusion drives pushing it forward. But that wasn't what worried him. Show me the power readings, Vell ordered. The screen changed and everyone in the room went quiet. Numbers and graphs filled the display, all showing the same impossible thing. The ugly metal ship was producing more energy than a battle cruiser. Much more. This can't be right, Nala whispered, her large eyes growing wider. Check the sensors again. Crix's crystal body flashed different colors as he worked. I've checked 3 times, Commander. The readings are correct. That ship is generating enough power to destroy a moon. Vell felt his stomach drop. In his 40 years of service, he had never seen anything like this. The ship looked peaceful enough. It wasn't firing weapons or making threats, but the energy signature was terrifying. Can we identify the species? He asked. Working on it, Nala replied, her webbed fingers dancing over her console. I'm picking up their communications. The language is unknown, but I'm running it through the translation matrix now. Minutes passed like hours. The unknown ship kept moving toward the inner systems, unaware that it had been detected. Vell watched the energy readings climb higher, as their sensors got a better look at the vessel. Got something, Nala announced. The translation is rough, but they call themselves humans from a planet called Earth. The ship is designated UES Endeavor. What are they saying? Vell asked. Nala listened to her headphones for a moment. It sounds like normal ship communications. They're talking about course corrections, system checks, and something called coffee break schedules. Very boring stuff for a doomsday weapon. Crix's crystals turned a worried shade of orange. Commander, I'm detecting multiple energy sources throughout their ship. It's not just one big weapon. The entire vessel seems to be one massive destructive device. Vell stared at the display in horror. The humans had turned their entire ship into a weapon. Every room, every corridor was showing dangerous energy levels. What kind of species would do such a thing? Are they heading for any populated systems? He asked. Their current course will take them past 3 mining colonies and directly toward the trade routes near Proxima Station, Nala reported. 40 million beings live in that sector. The weight of responsibility crushed down on Vell's shoulders. He had been trained for this moment. the discovery of a hostile alien species with planet-killing technology. The protocols were clear, but he had hoped he would never need to use them. Crix, send an emergency signal to High Command. Priority Alpha Red, Vel ordered. Tell them we have a Class X threat approaching populated space. Class X? Nala gasped. Commander, are you sure? That classification is for extinction-level weapons. Vel pointed at the screen where the energy readings pulsed like a dangerous heartbeat. Look at those numbers, Nala. This ship could crack a planet in half. What else would you call it? As Crix sent the emergency message, Vel continued studying the human vessel. The more he looked, the more confused he became. The ship's design was primitive in many ways. No energy shields, no quantum armor, no gravity manipulation drives. But somehow, they had managed to pack enough destructive power into that metal shell to threaten entire star systems. Commander, Nala said softly, I'm still listening to their communications. They don't sound like conquerors. One of them just complained about the food dispenser being broken. Another one is talking about missing his family back home. It might be a trick, Vel replied, but doubt crept into his voice. Species advanced enough to build planet killers might also be smart enough to use psychological warfare. The communications console beeped with an incoming message. Crix's crystals flashed blue as he received it. Response from High Command, Commander. They want all available data transmitted immediately. Admiral Rex is mobilizing the Third Fleet. Vel nodded grimly. The Third Fleet was the military's rapid response force, designed to handle the worst possible threats. If they were coming, it meant High Command took the situation very seriously. Continue monitoring the human ship, Vel ordered. I want to know everything, their speed, their course, and especially any changes in those energy levels. Over the next hour, the team watched and waited. The human ship continued on its path, completely unaware that it had been classified as the most dangerous weapon in galactic history. Their communications remained casual and boring. Talk of duty shifts, meal schedules, and something called movie night. It doesn't make sense, Nala muttered, studying the translation logs. They're acting like a normal exploration crew, but they're carrying enough firepower to sterilize planets. Crix's crystals pulsed thoughtfully. Perhaps they don't realize how dangerous their own technology is. Some species develop weapons without understanding their full potential. Vel considered this possibility. It was almost worse than facing deliberate conquerors. An ignorant species with planet-killing weapons was unpredictable, and possibly even more dangerous. How long until they reach the populated systems? He asked. At their current speed, 18 hours, Nala calculated. The Third Fleet should intercept them in 12 hours if they maintain maximum speed. Vel looked at the screen one more time. The ugly metal ship continued its journey through space, its crew probably excited about humanity's first contact with alien life. They had no idea that 300 warships were racing to stop them before they could accidentally destroy half the galaxy. Keep monitoring, Vel said finally, and pray that Admiral Rex knows what he's doing, because if those humans are as dangerous as our sensors say they are, we might be looking at the beginning of the end. The alarm bells had stopped ringing, but the tension in Station Alpha 9 remained thick as fog. Everyone knew that the next few hours would determine the fate of millions of innocent beings. And somewhere in space, Captain Mason of the UES Endeavour was probably wondering what alien coffee might taste like. The great meeting hall of Nexus Prime had never seen such panic. The massive space station, home to the Galactic Council, buzzed with activity as representatives from 12 major species rushed to their emergency session. The hall's crystal dome showed the stars outside, but today those stars felt less welcoming. Admiral Rex of the Scale Republic stood at the central podium, his reptilian features hard as stone. His red eyes scanned the assembled delegates, taking note of who had arrived and who was still coming. This was the fastest emergency session in Council history. Thank you all for coming so quickly, Rex began, his deep voice carrying easily through the hall. What I'm about to show you will change everything we thought we knew about galactic security. Dr. Moss of the Root Collective swayed gently in her soil-filled container, her leaf-like appendages rustling with concern. Admiral, your message, spoke of an extinction-level threat. Surely that's an exaggeration. I wish it were, Rex replied grimly. He activated the main display, and the image of the UES Endeavour appeared above them all. The assembled delegates studied the crude-looking vessel with confusion. Captain Flo of the Deep Current floated in his water sphere, his tentacles moving in patterns of disbelief. This primitive ship is the threat? It looks like it was built in a scrapyard. That's what we thought too, Rex said. Until we saw this. The display changed to show the energy readings from Station Alpha 9. Gasps and shocked sounds filled the hall as the numbers appeared. Even species that rarely showed emotion looked stunned. Elder Bright of the Lightwalkers, beings of pure energy, flickered with alarm. These readings, they're impossible. No ship that size could contain such power. The data has been verified by 3 separate monitoring stations, Rex continued. This vessel, belonging to a previously unknown species, called humans, is generating enough energy to destroy entire star systems. Counselor Stone of the Mountain Builders, a creature made of living rock, spoke in his slow, careful way. Perhaps their instruments are different from ours. Maybe what we see as weapons are actually something else. Rex shook his massive head. We considered that possibility, but look at this. The display showed a detailed scan of the ship's interior. Energy sources are scattered throughout the entire vessel. Every room, every corridor shows dangerous power levels. They've turned their whole ship into one giant weapon. The hall erupted in worried discussions. Species that had been enemies for centuries suddenly found themselves agreeing on one thing. This was terrifying. Dr. Moss raised a branch-like arm for attention. Have we tried communicating with them? Perhaps they don't realize how dangerous they appear. Station Alpha 9 has been monitoring their communications, Rex replied. The humans seem to be on a peaceful exploration mission, but that could be a cover story. General Wing of the Sky Dancers, a graceful bird-like being, spread her feathers in distress. Or it could be that they're so advanced they don't even consider us worth lying to. They might see us as insects. The thought sent a chill through the assembled representatives. A species so powerful that they didn't bother with deception was perhaps the most frightening possibility of all. Ambassador Tide of the Storm Riders slammed a fin against his water tank. How far are they from populated space? Current projections put them at Proxima Station in 16 hours, Rex answered. 40 million beings live in that sector, not counting the mining colonies they'll pass along the way. The number hit the eye. Assembly, like a physical blow. 40 million lives hung in the balance, and they had less than a day to decide what to do about it. Counselor Knight of the Shadow Clan emerged from a dark corner where few had noticed him. What do we know about human military capabilities? Do they have a fleet following the ship? Unknown, Rex admitted. This appears to be their first vessel to leave their home system, but if this is just their exploration ship, imagine what their warships must be like. The thought made several delegates visibly shudder. If humans built exploration vessels as weapons of mass destruction, their actual military must be beyond comprehension. Dr. Moss tried again, for calm discussion. Surely we should attempt peaceful contact first, declare our presence, explain the situation. Many conflicts start from simple misunderstandings. With respect, Doctor, Rex replied, this isn't a simple misunderstanding. Their ship could crack planets. Even if they're peaceful now, what happens when they're not? What happens when they realize how much more advanced they are than the rest of us? Elder Bright pulsed with worried light. The Admiral has a point. A species with this kind of power would quickly dominate the galaxy if they chose to. We might be looking at our future masters, Captain Flo's tentacles twisted with anxiety, or our executioners. Species this advanced might not see any value in keeping primitive races alive. The debate continued for hours, but the conclusion seemed inevitable. Every time someone suggested peaceful contact, another delegate pointed to the terrifying energy readings. Every time someone proposed waiting and watching, others reminded them of the 40 million lives at stake. Finally, Rex called for quiet. We need to make a decision. I propose we classify this human vessel as a Class X extinction event weapon and authorize immediate military containment. The hall fell silent. Class X was the highest threat level in galactic law, reserved for dangers that could end entire civilizations. It had never been used before. Dr. Moss made one last attempt at reason. The classification seems extreme for a single ship, regardless of its power. Is it? Rex challenged. Look at those readings again. This one ship has enough firepower to sterilize dozens of worlds. If that doesn't qualify as an extinction event weapon, what does? The vote was called. One by one, the species representatives gave their decision. Even Dr. Moss, despite her reservations, voted for the classification. The math was simply too frightening to ignore. Motion carried, Rex announced. The human vessel is hereby classified as a Class X extinction event weapon. I am authorized to use all necessary force to contain the threat. As the assembly broke up, delegates hurried to contact their home worlds with the news. The galaxy's first contact with humanity would be a military one, and everyone hoped it wouldn't be their last contact with anyone. Rex remained at the podium, staring at the image of the human ship. Somewhere aboard that vessel, beings who might be peaceful explorers or potential destroyers continued their journey toward populated space. In a few hours, he would find out which they really were. The stakes couldn't be higher, and there would be no second chances. Captain Mason was enjoying his morning coffee when the ship's alarm started screaming. He nearly spilled the hot liquid on his uniform as he rushed to the bridge of the UES Endeavor. Around him, his crew moved with practiced efficiency, taking their positions at various stations. "Report," Mason called out as he settled into his command chair. Lieutenant Baker, a young woman with short red hair, looked up from her sensor station with wide eyes. "Sir, we've got company, lots of company." The main screen flickered to life, showing space around their ship. Mason's coffee cup slipped from his fingers as he saw what surrounded them. Dozens of alien vessels had appeared from nowhere, their sleek designs unlike anything humanity had ever imagined. Some looked like living creatures, others resembled geometric crystals, and a few seemed to be made of pure light. "How many?" Mason asked, his voice steady despite his racing heart. 43 ships, Captain," Baker replied. "All of them have weapons pointed at us." Chief Engineer Torres, a stocky man with graying hair, whistled low. "Well, this isn't how I imagined first contact would go." Mason stood up, straightening his uniform. Humanity's first meeting with alien life, and they were outnumbered 43-1 with weapons trained on them. Still, he had been chosen to lead this mission because he could stay calm under pressure. "Open communications," he ordered. "Let's see what they want." The main screen changed to show the bridge of the largest alien vessel. A massive reptilian creature sat in what looked like a command chair, its red eyes fixed on Mason with obvious suspicion. When it spoke, the universal translator turned its words into rough English. "Human vessel, this is Fleet Admiral Claw of the Scale Republic. You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender immediately or face destruction." Mason blinked in surprise. The alien's tone was harsh, but something about the situation felt wrong. These beings had superior technology and overwhelming numbers. If they wanted to destroy the Endeavor, they could have done it already. "Greetings, Admiral Claw," Mason replied calmly. "I'm Captain Mason of the United Earthship Endeavor. We come in peace and mean no harm to anyone. Perhaps we can discuss the situation like civilized beings." On the alien bridge, Mason could see other creatures moving around nervously. They seemed scared? But why would an advanced alien fleet be afraid of one human exploration ship? "You will power down all weapons and prepare to be boarded," Admiral Claw demanded. Mason looked confused. "Admiral, we don't have any weapons. This is a scientific exploration vessel." The statement caused visible shock among the aliens. Several of them started talking rapidly in their own languages, creating a buzz of activity that the translator couldn't follow. "Impossible," Admiral Claw finally said. "Our sensors detect massive weapon signatures throughout your ship." "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Mason replied patiently. "Would you like to come aboard and see for yourself?" I can offer you some coffee while we sort this out. The word coffee seemed to cause even more panic among the aliens. Mason heard one of them shout something that the translator rendered as, "He's activating the quantum weapon." Before Mason could explain that coffee was just a beverage, Admiral Claw cut the communication. On the Endeavor's bridge, the crew looked at each other in confusion. "That went well," Torres muttered sarcastically. 20 minutes later, a small shuttle approached the Endeavor. Mason met the alien delegation in the ship's main cargo bay, which they had hastily converted into a meeting room. The group that emerged from the shuttle was unlike anything from Earth's imagination. Admiral Claw led the way, his massive reptilian form moving with surprising grace. Behind him came a tall, thin creature that looked like it was made of living crystal, its body refracting light in beautiful patterns. The third alien resembled a cross between an octopus and a jellyfish, floating in some kind of water-filled suit. "Welcome aboard the Endeavor," Mason said with a smile, extending his hand in greeting. The aliens froze. The crystal being's lights flickered rapidly, and Admiral Claw took a step backward. "He's reaching for a weapon," the floating alien said in a voice like gurgling water. "It's just a handshake," Mason explained gently, lowering his hand. "A human greeting. We mean no harm." The delegation looked around the cargo bay nervously. Mason followed their gaze, trying to see what had them so worried. It looked like a normal ship interior to him. Metal walls, equipment lockers, and a small table where someone had left their tablet computer running a video game. The crystal alien pointed at the tablet with what might have been terror. "What is that reality distortion device?" Mason walked over and picked up the tablet, causing all three aliens to take several steps back. "This? It's just a tablet computer. Someone was playing a game." He showed them the screen, where colorful shapes were moving around. "See? It's called Tetris." The floating alien made a sound like a whale in distress. "He's casually handling a dimensional manipulation weapon." "It's not a weapon," Mason protested. "It's entertainment. Look, let me show you around the ship. Maybe that will clear up this confusion." Admiral Claw looked like he wanted to refuse, but curiosity seemed to win over fear. "Very well. But any sudden movements, and my ships will open fire." Mason nodded and led them toward the ship's main corridor. As they walked, he pointed out various features of the Endeavor. "That's the mess hall where we eat, those are crew quarters where people sleep, and that's the recreation room." Through the recreation room's window, they could see Petty Officer Johnson watching something on the wall screen while eating popcorn. The alien's instruments started beeping frantically. "What is that massive energy discharge?" the crystal being asked, in what sounded like panic. Mason looked through the window. "Oh, that's just Johnson watching a movie. It's called Star Wars. Pretty good space adventure film, actually." The statement seemed to make the aliens even more nervous. Mason was starting to realize that everything on his ship was somehow being misinterpreted as threatening. "Perhaps," he said carefully, "you could explain what your sensors are detecting? Maybe we can figure out where the confusion is coming from." Admiral Claw looked at his handheld scanner, then at Mason, then back at the scanner. "Your entire ship is radiating enough energy to crack a moon in half. Every room contains what our technology identifies as weapons of mass destruction." Mason stared at the alien in genuine bewilderment. "That's impossible. We're just explorers." But, even as he said it, he began to wonder what human technology might look like to aliens who had never seen it before. Chief Engineer Torres wiped her hands on a rag and smiled at the alien delegation. "Welcome to the engine room, folks. This is where all the magic happens." The three aliens, Admiral Claw, the crystal being called Shine, and the floating creature named Bubble, stood frozen at the entrance. Their scanning devices were making sounds like dying electronic animals. "The energy readings are off the charts," Shine whispered, his crystal body flickering between different colors of alarm. "This entire room is a doomsday weapon." Torres looked around her engine room with pride. It was her domain, filled with humming machinery, blinking lights, and the steady pulse of the fusion reactors. "She's a beauty, isn't she? Took me 3 years to get her running this smooth." Admiral Claw pointed a clawed finger at the main reactor housing. What is that massive destruction device? That's our coffee maker, Torres replied cheerfully. Industrial size. Keeps the whole crew happy during long shifts. The aliens exchanged looks of pure terror. Bubbles' tentacles writhed inside his water suit. They have weaponized their stimulants. This species is beyond our understanding. Torres walked over to the coffee machine and pressed a few buttons. The machine hummed to life, grinding beans and heating water. The aliens' scanners went completely crazy, beeping and flashing like a disco. Would you like some? Torres offered, pouring herself a cup of the steaming black liquid. It's a little strong, but it keeps you awake. She's preparing to demonstrate the weapon, Admiral Claw said in a strangled voice. Everyone stand back. Torres took a long sip of coffee and sighed with satisfaction. That hits the spot. You sure you don't want to try some? First rule of space travel. Never turn down good coffee. The simple act of drinking coffee seemed to terrify the aliens even more. Shine's crystal body turned a pale, frightened white. She consumed the quantum fuel directly, he whispered. What kind of beings are these humans? Before Torres could explain that coffee was just a beverage, the intercom crackled to life. Torres, could you come to the mess hall? The microwave is acting up again. On my way, Torres replied into the intercom. She looked at the aliens with an apologetic smile. Duty calls. Want to see more of the ship? The delegation followed her nervously through the corridors. As they walked, Torres chatted about the ship's systems, completely unaware that every word was making the aliens more frightened. The artificial gravity gives us some trouble sometimes, she explained. And don't get me started on the ventilation system. But the worst is when Johnson overclocks his gaming rig. Sometimes it interferes with navigation. Gaming rig? Bubble asked weakly. Yeah, the kid's built himself quite a setup. Runs about 6 computers at once, all linked together. Pretty impressive for jury-rigged equipment. The aliens nearly fainted. 6 linked computers sounded like a military-grade battle computer to them. They reached the mess hall to find Dr. Kim standing in front of a small metal box, frowning at it. She looked up when they entered. Oh, hey, Torres. This thing is making weird noises again. Torres walked over to the microwave and opened its door. Probably just needs cleaning. These things can be temperamental. She placed a leftover slice of pizza inside and closed the door. When she pressed the start button, the microwave began to hum and rotate the food inside. The alien scanning equipment exploded into activity. Lights flashed, alarms beeped, and Shine actually fell backward in shock. Controlled matter-antimatter reaction, he gasped. They're manipulating the basic forces of the universe to heat food. Dr. Kim looked confused. It's just a microwave. Pretty standard technology back on Earth. Every home has one. Every home? Admiral Claw repeated in horror. Your entire population has access to molecular manipulation weapons? Well, I wouldn't call them weapons, Dr. Kim said thoughtfully. More like convenience appliances, though I suppose you could hurt someone if you put your hand inside while it's running. The casual mention of potential harm made Bubble make a sound like a drowning fish. The microwave beeped to indicate the pizza was ready. Dr. Kim opened the door and carefully removed the hot food with a paper towel. Want some? She offered the aliens. It's yesterday's dinner, but it's still pretty good. The aliens backed away as if she was holding a live grenade. She's offering to share the quantum-treated matter, Shine whispered to his companions. This is either a gesture of supreme trust or a test of our worthiness. Dr. Kim shrugged and took a bite of the pizza. Your loss. Hey, Torres, while you're here, could you look at my computer? It's been running slow all morning. They moved to Dr. Kim's workstation, where multiple monitors displayed complex scientific data. The computer tower underneath had been modified with extra fans and cooling systems. I've been running climate simulations for the next 3 planets. We're supposed to visit, Dr. Kim explained. The calculations are pretty intensive, so I upgraded the processor last month. Torres knelt down and opened the computer case. Inside, circuits glowed with LED lights, and cooling fans spun quietly. Looks like you need more RAM. This processor is working harder than it should. Admiral Claw stared at the glowing circuits in absolute terror. They've built a quantum prediction machine. They can see the future. Not exactly the future, Dr. Kim corrected. Just weather patterns and atmospheric conditions. Pretty basic. Stuff for planetary exploration. Basic? Bubbles squeaked. You casually predict the behavior of entire atmospheric systems and call it basic? Before anyone could answer, a loud sound came from the recreation room next door. It sounded like explosions and laser fire. The aliens immediately assumed combat positions, but Torres just laughed. That's probably Johnson playing his space combat game. Kid's been trying to beat level 12 for weeks. They looked through the doorway to see Petty Officer Johnson surrounded by multiple computer screens, his hands moving rapidly over keyboard and controllers. The screens showed spaceships fighting in what looked like incredibly realistic battle scenarios. Johnson noticed them watching and paused his game. Hey everyone. Just trying to take out this alien mothership. These new graphics cards make it look so real. It's like actually being in space combat. The alien delegation stared at the multiple screens, the powerful computers, and the realistic battle simulations. Military training system, Admiral Claw whispered. They're practicing fleet combat against enemies that look remarkably like us. Johnson grinned and unpaused his game. Watch this maneuver. I've been working on it all week. On screen, human spaceships performed complex battle tactics against alien vessels. The graphics were so detailed that individual weapon systems could be seen firing. The three alien visitors watched in growing horror as they realized that from their perspective, they were looking at humans casually practicing the destruction of alien fleets. And the scariest part was how normal it all seemed to the human crew. The breakthrough came in the most unexpected place, the medical bay. Bubble, the floating alien, had started making distressed sounds halfway through the ship tour. His water suit was fogging up and his tentacles were moving in what looked like panic. Is he okay? Dr. Park asked with genuine concern. She was the ship's medical officer, a kind woman with gentle hands and a warm smile. Admiral Claw looked worried too. Bubble suffers from anxiety attacks when stressed. This situation has been overwhelming for him. Well, let's get him checked out, Dr. Park said immediately. Medical bay is just down the hall. She led them to a clean white room filled with equipment that hummed softly. The aliens' scanners immediately went crazy again, but Dr. Park ignored the noise and focused on her patient. Let's see what we can do for you, she said gently to Bubble. Can you tell me what you're feeling? Terror, Bubble admitted through his translator. Pure, overwhelming terror. Your species is beyond anything we imagined possible. Dr. Park looked puzzled, but didn't argue. Instead, she guided Bubble to the examination table. Well, let's start with some basic scans to make sure you're physically okay. She activated the medical scanner, and the machine began its work. To human eyes, it was just a standard MRI machine doing what it was designed to do. But to the aliens, it looked like something entirely different. Molecular-level scanning, Shine whispered in awe. She can see through solid matter and examine individual organs without invasive procedures. Admiral Claw stared at the display screen where Bubble's internal structure was clearly visible. The precision is incredible. They can probably manipulate biological systems at the cellular level. Dr. Park studied the scans with professional interest. His stress hormones are definitely elevated. Heart rate is high too. She turned to Bubble with a reassuring smile. You're having a classic panic attack, nothing dangerous but probably not very comfortable. She moved to a cabinet and pulled out a small device. This should help you relax. It's just a mild sedative, nothing harmful. When she activated the device, it made a soft humming sound. The aliens' equipment detected what their technology interpreted as precise molecular manipulation. She's performing cellular-level medical intervention, Admiral Claw breathed, without even opening him up. Dr. Park simply placed the device against Bubble's water suit, where it delivered a mild, calming agent through the water. Within minutes, Bubble's panicked movement slowed and his color returned to normal. How do you feel now? Dr. Park asked kindly. Much better, Bubble admitted. Thank you, but I still don't understand what's happening here. Dr. Park sat down beside the examination. Table. What exactly don't you understand? Admiral Claw spoke up. Your technology is beyond anything we've ever encountered. Your ship radiates enough power to destroy planets. Every room contains weapons that could end civilizations. Yet you act as if it's all perfectly normal. Dr. Park looked genuinely confused. Weapons? What weapons? This is a medical bay. That scanning device, Shine pointed at the MRI machine. It can see through any material and map biological systems in perfect detail. In the wrong hands, it could be used to target weaknesses in any species. And that molecular manipulator, Admiral Claw added, indicating the medical device Dr. Park had used. It can alter living tissue at the cellular level. Dr. Park stared at them for a long moment, then started laughing, not mockingly, but with genuine amusement and relief. You think our medical equipment is weapons? She asked between giggles. An MRI machine and an ultrasonic therapy device? What are those? Bubble asked nervously. Dr. Park stood up and patted the MRI machine affectionately. This old thing uses magnetic fields to create pictures of what's inside your body. Every hospital on Earth has dozens of them, and this, she held up the therapy device, uses sound waves to reduce inflammation and promote healing. My grandmother has one for her arthritis. The aliens looked at each other in growing confusion. But the energy readings, Admiral Claw protested weakly. Oh, that, Dr. Park said with understanding. You must be detecting our power systems. Yeah, human technology tends to be a bit robust. We like things that work reliably, even if they use more power than they probably need to. She led them back through the ship, but this time with a different perspective. In the mess hall, she explained how the microwave worked. In the engine room, she showed them that the coffee maker was just an oversized version of something every human owned. So when you said every home has molecular manipulation weapons, Admiral Claw said slowly, you meant every home has cooking appliances. Exactly, Dr. Park confirmed. We use microwaves to heat food, that's all. Shine's crystal body flickered with what might have been embarrassment. And the quantum prediction machine? Weather forecasting software, Dr. Park explained patiently. Pretty standard for any exploration mission. The military training system? Bubble asked weakly. Video games, Dr. Park laughed. Entertainment. Johnson likes to pretend he's a space pilot shooting aliens. She paused, realizing how that sounded. Fictional aliens, not real ones, definitely not real ones. Captain Mason joined them in the corridor, having heard about the medical emergency. How's our guest doing, Doctor? Much better now that we've cleared up a few misunderstandings, Dr. Park replied. It turns out our new friends thought we were some kind of super-advanced warrior species. Mason looked genuinely surprised. Us? We're just explorers. This is only our first trip outside our solar system. Admiral Claw sat down heavily in a nearby chair. You mean to tell me that all of this technology, all of these energy readings, all of this casual manipulation of matter and energy, is normal for your species? Well, yeah, Mason said. I mean, we like to build things that work well. Sometimes that means they use more power than they probably need to. But reliability is important when you're traveling between stars. The three aliens looked at each other, then back at the humans. So you're not planning to conquer the galaxy? Shine asked hopefully. Conquer? Mason looked shocked. Why would we want to do that? We just want to explore, meet new people, maybe do some trading. Speaking of which, would you like to try some of that coffee everyone keeps talking about? An hour later, the three alien visitors sat in the mess hall, carefully sipping coffee, and trying to understand how they had misread the situation so badly. This is actually quite good, Bubble admitted, his tentacles wrapping around the warm cup. Admiral Claw looked at his handheld scanner, which still showed massive energy readings from the coffee maker. Our sensors will need serious recalibration, Captain. Mason smiled as he watched the first successful diplomatic contact between humans and aliens. You know, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Outside the ship, the alien fleet waited nervously for word from their delegation. They had no idea that the galaxy's most feared weapon of mass destruction was actually just humanity's tendency to over-engineer their appliances. And somewhere in space, other species would soon learn that sometimes the most dangerous thing about humans wasn't their weapons, it was their coffee makers.